All right, now with all of this stuff going on, it's not looking good for the WNBA right now. I will say it is helping that Unrivaled's ratings are absolutely atrocious and embarrassing. But all in all, it seems like a lot of these ladies that the WNBA has helped, because at the end of the day, they have not been making money. The WNBA
This doesn't look bad. It looks catastrophic. What we're seeing right now isn't just another WNBA-related controversy. It's an outright existential threat. The same league Caitlin Clark helped rescue in 2024 now appears to be on the verge of collapse, and the most bitter irony is that the danger isn't coming from outside forces. It's coming from the very players who benefited most from the surge she created. The growth, the attention, the money. All of it was fueled by Clark's impact, yet now the league's future is being jeopardized by internal decisions. The hand holding the blade isn't an enemy's. It belongs to those standing closest to the success she made possible.
It could be death, okay? The first one is, okay, the WNBA and WNBPA agreed on a groundbreaking CBA in 2020, okay? So they agreed on that CBA. That was cool. Now, this was...
ESPN just laid out 11 separate moments that pushed the WNBA to this exact breaking point, where the league and the Players Association are completely deadlocked in CBA negotiations. But here's what ESPN won't say outright. 3 of those 11 factors outweigh all the rest combined, and one of them changes the entire picture. To understand why things have reached this level, and why Caitlin Clark's future in the WNBA is suddenly in real danger, you have to follow the sequence of events that led here. Because once you see how this unfolded step by step, it becomes clear that this isn't just a labor dispute anymore. This could be the beginning of the end.
The WNBA announced the bubble season. Now, that was during a crazy time in the world. They started the wobble, and they played games. And Kathy Engelbert, for y'all that don't know, Kathy Engelbert had to beg these players to play, or there would be no more WNBA. A lot of these players wanted all of their money up front plus extra. Kathy Engelbert got that done. A lot of these players was willing to let this league die out in
Go back to June 2020, the bubble season everyone remembers, but few truly understand. What most fans don't realize is how close the league came to disappearing entirely. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert wasn't negotiating with players, she was pleading with them to show up. Without games during the pandemic, the WNBA would not have survived. Players were demanding full salaries paid immediately, plus additional hazard bonuses, while the league was bleeding money. Somehow, Engelbert pulled it off, convinced them to play, and kept the league on life support. And here's why that moment matters now. Many of the same players who were willing to let the league collapse back then are the ones making demands today that the league simply cannot meet.
Okay? That's a big deal, because that shift the balance in power between the private owners that just own WNBA teams and the owners that own WNBA, NBA teams. And now you have this investor group in that situation, that extra 16% that shift the balance in power. Something else that happened was a Liberty were fined for illicit chartering. Now, being that the New York Liberty got fined $500,000 for doing their own private.
Then came February 2022 and the massive capital infusion. The league raised $75 million from a mix of new investors and existing owners, the largest funding round ever for a women's sports property. On the surface, it sounded like a huge win, but there was a trade-off. The WNBA gave up 16% of its equity in the process. Overnight, ownership fractured into 3 distinct camps: 42% held by WNBA-only team owners, another 42% controlled by NBA owners with WNBA franchises, and the remaining 16% belonging to outside investors. That altered power structure matters now, because when 3 different ownership groups with competing priorities are forced to negotiate revenue splits, consensus becomes difficult, and that tension is at the center of today's CBA standoff.
That was an issue. Okay, in 2023, the Aces kickstart facilities race. All right, so now you see you starting to see these teams put this money into these facilities. Right now, the Aces have a really great owner who's willing to spend money on the best coaches, the best facilities. He'll fly them private on his own. He's willing to do things that other owners wasn't. Now, we are about to get to the big part right here. Okay.
Then you had the Liberty hit with a $500,000 fine for chartering private flights. Their owner, Joe Tsai, chose to fly the team privately because he could afford it and wanted to give his players better conditions. The league stepped in and said no, arguing it created a competitive imbalance, and slapped them with a $500,000 penalty. At the same time, Las Vegas Aces owner Mark Davis was pouring money into elite facilities, top coaching staffs, and a full championship-level infrastructure. Some owners are willing to invest aggressively, others are not, and that disparity has been quietly fueling resentment for years. The divide between teams that want to spend and teams that want cost controls has only widened as new money enters the league, setting the stage for the conflicts we're seeing now.
Yada, yada, yada. This was the biggest part right here. And this, I believe, is one of, if not the biggest thing in why we are at this point, is because of this brilliant young lady here, Caitlin Clark. April 2024, Caitlin Clark drafted into WNBA. Spotlight intensifies. Remember that. Spotlight intensifies. Fresh off a record-breaking senior season at Iowa, Clark was drafted #1 in the 2024 draft.
Then came April 2024, the turning point that reshaped everything before it. Caitlin Clark was selected first overall by the Indiana Fever, and the draft broadcast alone averaged 2.45 million viewers, not for a game, but simply to watch her name announced and see which jersey she'd wear. That level of attention was unprecedented for the WNBA. The league had never experienced anything like it and clearly wasn't prepared. They didn't know how to shield her, how to build a marketing strategy around her, or how to manage the spotlight she brought. What they did know, however, was how to monetize every ounce of interest she created.
Because I don't believe that without Caitlin Clark, they would have the demands that they have. Period. Weeks later, the league announced it was transitioning to a full-time chartering program. Weeks later, yeah, some teams was flying private on back-to-backs. They was flying private for the finals. Weeks later, after Caitlin Clark gets drafted, everybody flying private, every game. What we talking about? What we talking about? She changed this thing, man.
What people really need to understand about Caitlin Clark's influence is that it went far beyond record-breaking ratings and packed arenas, as historic as those were. She fundamentally shifted what WNBA players believed they were entitled to. Just weeks after she was drafted, the league announced full-time charter flights for every team, not just for the playoffs or back-to-back games, but for every trip. That decision added millions of dollars in operating costs almost overnight. And the reason was obvious. The optics of the league's biggest star flying commercial while being physically targeted night after night would have been catastrophic. Players had been asking for charter flights for years, citing safety and recovery concerns, and the league repeatedly claimed it wasn't financially possible. Then Caitlin Clark arrived, and suddenly it wasn't just possible, it became non-negotiable. That single shift permanently changed what players believed the league could and should provide.
Of the spots rise in popularity, other college stars such as fellow 2024 draftee Angel Reese and more recently Paige Bueckers also brought in significant followings. I will argue the Paige Bueckers thing because Paige Bueckers can't draw no ratings in Unrivaled. Paige Bueckers had the third lowest attendance in all of the WNBA in Dallas last year. I don't believe Paige is the big star y'all try to make her to be. I just think Paige is a great, great basketball player, but that's just me. It became clear Clark was sort of a rising tide that helped lift all.
The numbers from Caitlin Clark's rookie year are almost unbelievable. She drove the highest attendance totals the league has ever seen and shattered viewership records week after week. The WNBA Finals matchup between New York and Minnesota posted the strongest ratings in 25 years, and Clark wasn't even part of that series. She functioned as a rising tide that lifted the entire league. Angel Reese benefited from the spotlight. Paige Bueckers entered with enormous hype. But let's be honest about reality. Paige Bueckers recorded one of the lowest average attendance figures in Dallas last season, and her Unrivaled ratings right now are dismal. The notion that there are multiple stars operating at Clark's level is marketing spin, not fact. Clark is the star, singular, and everyone inside the league understands that, even if they refuse to admit it publicly.
about rivalries or iconic personalities fueling a business model. WNBPA Executive Director Terry Jackson said in a statement, "This kind of toxic fandom should never be tolerated or left unchecked. It demands immediate action and frankly should have been addressed long ago." So you had all of this nonsense. Now you got everybody calling all Clark fans racist, no matter what skin color they are. Now, Caitlin Clark comes in, brings in all this fanfare, all this money. Boom, WNBA secures a monumental media deal. Okay, $2.2 billion deal.
Then the media rights agreement landed, and everything escalated. A staggering $2.2 billion over 11 years with Disney, Amazon Prime Video, and NBC Universal. Not a typo, billion with a B. To put that in perspective, the previous deal was worth roughly $50 million spread across multiple seasons. This new contract was nearly 20 times larger, and it materialized directly because of the explosion in WNBA viewership driven by Caitlin Clark in 2024. When players saw that figure, the math was obvious. If the league was about to receive $2.2 billion while player revenue shares remained relatively small, something had to give. That realization is what pushed the Players Association to opt out of the existing CBA and force immediate renegotiations, while their leverage was at its peak.
So now players is seeing the money, right? 2024, the players opt out of the previous CBA. Now, they might not even opted out. They may have opted out with or without Caitlin Clark. They damn sure wouldn't have the demands that they have right now without Caitlin Clark, but they may not have even opted out. Okay, boom, 2025 Unrivaled launches. Now, we know that Unrivaled was trying to get the WNBA out of here. We know that. They was trying to get them out of here, but it's 3-on-3 and the ratings are absolutely garbage right now. So that didn't work. That didn't work at all.
This is where things start to unravel. Unrivaled launched in January 2025, a 3-on-3 league spearheaded by Stewart and Stewart Collier, pitched as a domestic off-season alternative so WNBA players wouldn't need to play overseas. On the surface, it sounded like a positive move. But beneath that pitch was a clear strategic angle. Unrivaled was meant to function as leverage in CBA negotiations. If players had another viable league, even a smaller one, it would shift the balance of power. The problem is that the plan failed. Unrivaled's ratings have been brutal, barely reaching 300,000 viewers on a strong night. By comparison, Caitlin Clark's regular season games with the Fever routinely cleared 1 million viewers. The leverage disappeared because the product didn't resonate, and because the one player who could have changed everything, Caitlin Clark, declined to participate.
And we know everything that took place from that. My point is, these things have led up. Some things more significant than others. That situation where Kathy Engelbert had to pretty much beg the players to play in the bubble, that was big. The Caitlin Clark arriving to this league was the biggest, because now it's set an expectation for these players and they're making all kind of demands that they never would be making without her, all while bashing the very people who are bringing in this money that they want to get. They want to bash them, but they want to capitalize off them. And this ultimately are some of the things that could lead to the potential death of Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. Get down.
So where does that leave us? The WNBA and the Players Association are deadlocked, negotiations have collapsed, and the players are demanding a much larger share of revenue, guaranteed contracts, the removal of the salary cap, full free agency, basically everything on the wish list. And here's the uncomfortable reality. Without Caitlin Clark, most of these demands wouldn't even be on the table. The $2.2 billion media deal never happens without her. The charter flights wouldn't exist. The mainstream attention wouldn't materialize. She changed the league's financial landscape in a single season, yet a significant portion of the Players Association spent that same year attacking her fanbase, allowing her to be physically targeted without consequence, labeling her supporters racist regardless of their race, and making it clear they resented her success. Now those same players want to cash in on the opportunities she created, while continuing to foster a hostile environment around her. And if these CBA talks collapse, if we see a work stoppage or lockout, Caitlin Clark is the one player with real options outside the WNBA. She could play overseas for multiples of what the league pays, start her own league, or focus on endorsements and business ventures. She doesn't need the WNBA, but the WNBA desperately needs her. The Players Association seems to have forgotten that fundamental fact, negotiating like the league can replace her overnight. They think they have leverage, but the truth is the leverage walked in the door because of one player, and that same player could walk right back out if the environment doesn't improve. This could genuinely mark the end of the Caitlin Clark era in the WNBA, not because she wants to leave, but because the league and the players have created conditions where leaving might be her best move. If she departs, that $2.2 billion media deal suddenly looks wildly overpriced for content that can't deliver the viewership that justified it. The players demanded to be treated like true professionals, and Caitlin Clark made that possible. Yet their response has been to bite the hand that fed them while demanding even more. That's not a sustainable plan. That's not how you grow a league. That's how you destroy one. So we're at a crossroads. Either the Players Association realizes their interests align with protecting and promoting their biggest star, or they keep moving down a path of resentment and unrealistic demands. If it's the latter, we may look back on 2024 as both the high point and the start of the WNBA's fall from the mainstream spotlight. Because here's the reality. Caitlin Clark gave the league something it had never had before: real, genuine mainstream relevance, the kind of cultural attention that changes everything. That kind of attention goes beyond just sports fans and reaches casual viewers who never watched women's basketball before. That's rare. That's valuable. That's irreplaceable. And it can vanish just as fast as it appeared if the people benefiting from it don't wake up and recognize what they have before it's gone. The clock is running out. Negotiations are stalled, and every day this drags on brings Caitlin Clark closer to the decision that she's done dealing with a league that profits from her while refusing to protect her. What happens if she walks away? Can the WNBA survive losing the one player who made mainstream America care, or does the whole house of cards collapse back to where it was before she arrived? Drop your prediction in the comments, because this story is far from over.